Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And thank goodness. Welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. Thanks for being here with us tonight.
Yeah.
So I guess, it's kind of funny because every time, well, I have a window next to me and you obviously can't tell it at home, but I feel like every time that I've looked out my window this past week, we've had a different weather condition go through. And with that, I think everybody is experiencing different conditions, be that ice or be that open water or be that all the different weather patterns and stuff in between. Us here in Wisconsin, the northern part of the state has snow and the southern part of the state has had a ton of rain. And so there's been a lot going on.
Yeah, and it's like you said, looking outside, and it's like you either look outside and it's dark, or you look outside and it's less dark. But yeah, I don't know. The rain isn't all bad. It's kind of sucks to get rid of the ice. We might go find a little patch here this weekend, but in our neck of the woods, we kind of needed a little bit of the rain, and it'll get the walleyes moving in the Winnebago system for sure.
So I guess with that, touching on last weekend, we were actually able to find ice. That is not true all over. And we did have our spud bar and all of that with us. But we found actually, I didn't measure it. It was probably still 12 to 15 inches, I'd say. I usually am pretty good at measuring. But the thing that we noticed is that the ice condition itself was deteriorating bad. Like the top layers were super, super slushy, just not very thick or hard or anything like that. And even drilling down with the auger, we were finding that it was like ripping out pretty big chunks of ice, and that's just one of the things that happens as that ice warms up, is that those conditions, like the structure of ice, changes. So that's, especially noticeable towards the shorelines, because that's a lot of times where that warm water is seeping out of the land and, opening up those shores. But if you do have a place where there's still a dock that was in, it was floating, if you can get out to some of that ice that's farther out there, that's what we did last weekend, and we caught fish.
Yeah, that ice was getting pretty mealy, but the fish were biting. It seems like every weekend we have the fish. There's a cold front coming in, so it's still a little bit of work. It wasn't fast and furious, but it was a consistent bite. We caught a bunch of really nice gills and even a bonus walleye, some bass, all kinds of stuff. It was kind of crazy, actually.
Well, and the past Saturday's weather wasn't quite as awesome. And we did find kind of a better quality of fish, kind of bigger size of fish, mostly panfish at that point. Sunday, though, you could not resist to be out there because the weather was fabulous. It was warm. The wind did kind of pick up, but that there was different species of fish biting, but I can't say the quality was quite as there as the other day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just put Shotgun's fishing report up there. He's down south Winnebago system, so they're catching walleyes down there, it looks like. So that's pretty awesome. I have been seeing those pictures come in, so that's fun. Yeah. Hey, John. Hey, Sean. Yeah. So we're getting going here, but yeah, we have kind of a fun thing coming up. We'll be heading down to Missouri, so keep an eye on the page because I'm sure we'll have. We have 10 hours worth of shenanigans that we can get into. So we'll be heading out next Tuesday night, and then we'll be in Missouri all week. So I don't know.
Well, and I guess with that, stay tuned because, we like to bring some of that to you live. And, you always have to wonder how the internet is going to be and how that translates and transfers because being live, I don't know, you never know.
Hey,
so
Ken,
if things
hey,
don't
Corey.
work that way, then we'll definitely still do videos and post it and bring you guys as much as we possibly can. Because as far as, the Bass Pro Shops Fishing World Fair, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be one of the biggest expos that's ever happened.
Hey, John.
So, whether it's some of our old favorite stuff or some new stuff or whatever in between, we're looking forward to sharing that with you. So, stay tuned live here on Facebook and also on YouTube.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of YouTube, I guess we'll kind of announce the winner of the walleye jig kit. We had a couple of subscribers and, I don't know if I didn't do a good enough job of getting that out there, but we'll do some more of that coming up here during the summer. I have a little bit of time to tinker around and make some stuff in the tackle rod shop. So we'll get some of that going on as the summer moves on too. So
So are you announcing that now?
No, we'll do it later in the show.
Oh, okay. This is unscripted. I thought Josh was doing this right now. So I guess with that, we have lots of people checking in. Hello to all of
Ron.
you, but if you guys have questions or comments or things along the way, we have a really fun guest. And he's even checking in with us here tonight. So let's bring Corey into the show. And thanks for being here.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Está bien.
Yep, you had 3 years of Spanish too. Nicely done.
Oh my gosh.
Uno más cerveza, por favor. You got it nailed, dude. You can go on vacation anywhere in Mexico. You can make it.
There you go.
Oh my gosh. So we are so excited to have you here with us tonight. And it seems like maybe there's quite a few people in the comments who know you already, but for those that don't, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I guess. My name is Corey. I am 6'3", 180 pounds. I am a Gemini. I like long strolls on the beach, sometimes short strolls on the beach. I like cerveza. So we're already hitting everything in Spanish tonight. So if this is going to go SAP, then people understand like, what the hell is going on? No, I mean, I don't want to say I'm famous yet. I'm trying to be famous. I'm very passionate about fishing, just like yourselves. And again, over the course of the interwebs and pages and groups before Facebook, even, we were all part of some sort of fishing page, and that's where we would hang out and talk to people that had the same passion as we did. And it got to the point where, I really, you'd see these branches of people, like this is obviously your sponsor guy. This is obviously your, they have a drive this way or the other. And I was like, I just wanted to be honest immediately, right off the bat. My name, I threw it on the internet. I haven't hid from that name. And I just have been trying to be completely honest with people as far as fishing reports, fishing information, try to have fun with it like we all do. Of course, that's a big part of it as well. And in a long story along the lines is I came up with this idea called Macula Tackle, which we got to chat about a little bit at the Northwest Sports Show. So that's we can dive into that plenty deep if you want to, but that's basically just who I am. I'm just a normal average fisherman that works hard like a lot of people, is always willing to learn. And if I'm not learning, I just give up. So I haven't given up yet. I'm still learning.
So I would love to dive into all of that, I guess. So you're talking about Macula Tackle. I'm Corey Bechtold. I hope I'm saying your last name right. I'm just seeing it on the screen there. But neither of those is where does Macula Tackle come from?
All right. Well, we could go with the name Macula, and I can go back a little ways as to we had this idea about a jig that would maybe change the way people fish, but just obviously have a very large opening that made things easy to tie. And we can dive back there, but the name Macula actually was when we decided to launch a company or try to launch a company, what names are available. So I was looking online, we had the idea, thought like cheater, because most people need cheaters and stuff for tying on small jigs. And then my wife's like, well, that sounds real negative, so we shouldn't have the word cheater in our name. And then we're trying to like, oh, halo, like this halo, halo. I mean, everything we looked for online was taken, every name. And my wife is like a deep diver, when she sees something, she's like, all right, we're going to figure this out. And the concept behind Macula Tackle is a jig that's very easy to tie. That was like the first thing. And then there's functionality that comes along with it, which, long story, we can get to that in the second hour. But what it was is the main thing was the ease of tie, the eye. And so my wife's like, all right, eye. So she just started researching the human eye and all the people, all the things, the pupil, the retina, the cornea, the this, the that, the everything. And she was like looking at what they meant online, right? And then she came across the word macula, and she was like, oh, what's that? So she did like a research on what the macula is in your eye, and what it was is it's the part of your eye which allows you to focus on fine detail. And she's like, "Huh, what do you think of the name macula?" And I'm like, "I don't know, what is this?" And it was like one of them things that just kind of clicked. We did a search to see if there was is there macula tackle in the world, or on the social internet and everything, and it was available. And I'm like, we're just gonna rock with macula tackle. I like the story, I like the concept, and I actually just found out yesterday my father-in-law has macular degeneration.
Oh,
So now we have to figure out what's going on with his eyesight, and if he has to have surgery or what's going to happen. And long story there. But that's where macula, the name macula tackle, comes from. Thanks, Lisa.
that is actually really super interesting, though. And actually, it helps your logo make a little bit of sense, I feel like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the logo, oh my God, that was almost like one of them. Like, so this is a family business. It's just starting up. Like, we haven't, this is so small. We're on the actual ground floor of starting this company, and just getting the name was a huge win. And then trying to come up with a logo was another one, because my daughter, Brooke, actually does a lot of our social media stuff. And she's been on some of the videos you've seen in either What's Working Now or Macula. She's just one of the funnest kids on the planet. She's got all kinds of energy, but she's a complete spaz. And so I don't know how else to say it. She knows it. She knows it. And we're sitting around. It was Lisa, myself, Cole kind of checks out, my son. He's like, eh. And but we were trying to come up with like a logo. Like, okay, well. And Brooke's like, well, Nike has Nike, Coca-Cola has Coca-Cola, and everything. And I'm like, yeah, but they didn't start out as a mega friggin' company. They started out, basically just, real small. And, we're trying to find something that, kind of fit the look of what we're looking for. And I mean, it was like hours and hours and hours of argument, and trying to work through it and try to get somebody to design it and everything. And so the logo itself, here, so there's a little bit of a hook, so you can see like hook points. And then the actual circle is, I actually am just fascinated by nature. Nature has the most beautiful images you will ever see, and sometimes you capture it. And sometimes I take pictures and you zoom in on a fish's eye, and you start seeing these little dashes on the edges. And, you wouldn't ever pay attention to this stuff unless you just really zoomed in on everything, and you start seeing all these little things. And so the logo just became, the center point, the eye, the focal point, the little dashes gives it dimension, like it's something looking. The hook around it, also the bottom hook swooping up and around, kind of like if you were in the water and a shark was circling you. So there was a lot of thought that kind of went into the logo, which when we finally landed on this, it was like, yes, that's what we're going with, that. and that's kind of where the logo came from and everything. So it's been a work in progress. Everything still is a work in progress, but it's been fun. It's been a amazing journey so far.
And so, it is all about, the eye of the jig in this case. So for people who are unfamiliar with that, do you have an example? Oh yeah, look at that. I just saw that somewhere.
Do you remember this? So again, this is our first year. Okay. We started in August, and the first show we did was the Hardwater Expo in Blaine. And it was like a couple nights before, and I'm freaking out. My wife's freaking out. Like, do we have enough inventory? Do we have everything? I mean, basically, we went into this show with, I hope they give us a table and a chair, and what are we going to put on it? And I was out in the shed, and I'm like, you know what? It's going to be so hard to grab like a pack of jigs and then tell somebody, oh, look at what makes us different than anybody else. People are going to be like, eh. So I was thinking, like, let's try to do something that we can show people from a distance, because in shows, and you guys have been there, right? Everybody's been there. they walk down the aisle and they kind of take a look at it, almost like a crappie when you drop an underwater camera. Like, I don't know if I want to see that there, but whatever. They stay at the distance. So I was like, hey, I made this basically out of a coat hanger. Whoop. And this is actually plastic filler that I made like a little quick mold, and I ground it all down because this is kind of like our original shape. And then painted it or primed it and painted it and gave the eye and everything. And this is kind of our little like explanation. So what we tell people is basically, if this is a traditional 1/32 ounce jig, okay, you have this teeny tiny little eyelet right here. That's what you have to get your line through. And when your eyesight sucks, your hands are cold, you're freezing, it's windy out, any hurdle that we all have as anglers, we're like, what am I going to do now? Especially if there's paint in it. And the whole concept was to have a very large opening to get your line through. And that's what this all evolved from. And the functionality that comes with it as well is really kind of cool, because depending on, we call this our rail. So it's one piece, and on the rail that's your whole eyelet, the whole thing. But if you put your knot after you tie it here, you can make your bait horizontal, or if you decide, you can slide your knot and you can make your bait vertical. So it's very, very functional. It's been it's eye-opening to people that finally see this, and you get the tire kickers immediately, like, I don't need that or something. It's like, cool, that's totally fine. I'm not selling my pillows here or anything, this is kind of reinventing the wheel. This is thinking out of the box. And once people see it, especially those that, I've heard it from so many people, like, if you just gone through chemotherapy, your digits, your fingers are like, they just, everything feels numb. Or people with like one gentleman has onset of Parkinson's, so he's very shaky. So you get so many people going, this is changing the way I fish. I can continue fishing, or they're not giving up anymore, whether they're dealing with poor eyesight or chemotherapy or rheumatoid arthritis or all these other dilemmas that we all have as anglers, because now they can easily get their line through the eye. So that's been really fun.
Well, or even just, because you're listing all of these, people, or if you identify with one of those situations. But I think even more than that, I see your average Joe or even your tournament angler. I mean, just the time that it saves you when you are trying to ruffle through baits, when you are trying to find that presentation that works. Sometimes you stop, you retie your jig, choose your color, blah, 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 fine. But when you are able to, like you're showing, go from that vertical and horizontal presentation just that quick, and you're not snipping line, you're not having to change leaders or any of that, that right in itself is, even also great for kids, get them out there, teach them these different tactics, but not have to, constantly be ruffling through a bait box.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny, like in years leading up to before we even had Macula tackle, when it was just a concept. And it was, God, my son, he's 20 years old right now. And I think he was 9 when we first went out on the lake. And I remember at this time, it was one of those things where my eyes were still decent, but I did have a 1.0 cheater in the car. And we went out to the lake, and I was all pumped up because I finally half-assed made a jig. This is the concept and everything. And I'm like, crap, I forgot my glasses at home. And I'm like, and I tied the knot, and I'm like, already, I won. All right, this is a winning concept. I hurdle number 1. I've totally went over that thing. I'm ready to fish. And I'm big on horizontal, and I really had never fully grasped the concept of vertical. Okay, this is 100% true story. And we were out on this lake very close to our house, drilling holes. And Cole, like at that age, I think it was early days of electric augers, and I was confident with him drilling his own holes and everything. So he was off in the distance. I was doing my thing, and I landed on a hole just full of fish. The Vexilar was just completely lit up, and I'm down there, and I'm like, my jig sucks. I literally was like, what the hell is going on? It's like the fish would chase, stop, chase, stop. And I was literally going, all right, something's really, really wrong. And anglers would always go, I have the wrong color, I have the wrong bait, I have the wrong shape, I have the wrong, and you start going through this checklist in your brain, which is forever long. And I reeled up, and I remember I looked at it, and I'm like, what if I do this? And I just moved the knot, and I sent it back down. And immediately, like the same fish that were still on my screen, just bam, bam. And I'm like, and I yelled over at Cole, and I'm like, make it vertical. And I could see him kind of looking like, what? And so I saw him reel up. I saw him adjust the knot and drop back down. And then both of us were just, doo, 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 doo. And I'm like, yes, we're winning. So then, the second day of product testing, went to a different lake, and that was 100% horizontal. Like if you were bumped out of horizontal, forget it. You might as well not even be on the water. We were on the ice, but you shouldn't have even been out there. And I remember that day too, because Cole he was pretty cocky as a young little kid, because he catches fish, man. He understands a lot of things that even accomplished anglers don't know, because even on a traditional jig, your position of your knot is critical. You guys probably know it, but I guarantee you 80% of the people that watch this or will watch this will probably end up sharing it to somebody like, oh my gosh, I would have never thought of that. And we were on this lake, and again, Cole and I were just boom, 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 boom. And then it got to the point where I'm like, I'm just going to sit back and watch Cole. So he's off in the distance, and he's just boom, crappie. And all the locals on this lake started to come out. The guys that are always like, well, when the sun's, 2 fingers, I don't remember his name, Tony Dean or somebody, one of those old, that was the prime time. That's when the fish eat. And literally we had fish all over on the ice, and this guy sitting there, he put his Vexilar down, but he wasn't even really fishing. And then the sun started to hit the treetops, and he's like, now he's fishing, right? And he's got his line down, and he's working, and I'm watching him jig. And finally, like, Cole was very close to him and catches a crappie. And then he goes to another hole behind the guy, catches another crappie, and then the crappie's like flopping on the ice, that sound that we all love to hear. And this guy turns around, he's like, he's like, well, I got fish on my Vex. He's like, come over here and see if you can catch this fish. Cole's like, all right. So Cole walks over, the guy pulls his line out, he drops down, because he understands that horizontal at times can be 100% critical. Literally just like works the fish for literally a couple seconds, and boom, sets the hook. And I hear this guy go, Jesus Christ, whose kid is this anyways? And I'm like, he's mine. I'm sorry. And he's like, and it was cool, because this guy was like, he wanted to know, what am I doing wrong, or what is happening? And he had a traditional jig, and Cole said, you're not horizontal right now. And the guy's like, what? And Cole's like, well, look, and because I taught it to this kid at a young age, that just move the knot just a little bit. And the guy's like, I've been fishing for 50 years, and I never would have thought of that. And it's like, all right, so it's all about knowledge, it's all about information and sharing. We want everyone to be successful. That story was epic. It was just a lot of fun.
That is a whole lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's a whole lot of fun about this is, I guess as a mold maker, I have a lot of interest. So this isn't something that you see around. So is this something that you guys like came up with the idea and is like a custom situation?
So the actual concept, I did see my dad, Brian, and early days of Facebook, he didn't understand you put your first name and then your last name. So Bechtold Brian. This whole concept actually kind of evolved around a fishing trip that we had together. And it was, I think, a Friday. If you hear my dogs, they decide to have Fight Club right now. If you hear that, let me yell at them. Hey, stop it. Well, they just got yelled at. But we went out fishing after work, and he had a permanent house, like a 6x12 or 14 or something like that. And he was like the traditional, got my bobber with my crappie minnow, and then I have my Vexlar with my jig that I work. And at that time, I was just like, you know what, that's way too much for me to focus on. I was a one hole guy, just worked that, you know, and worked the individual fish. And we were doing pretty well. And all of a sudden, I knew he had one on because, you know, in the fish house, the scurrying, I mean, God, other than bumping into the wall and knocking stuff over, I knew it was like something was happening. I turned and looked, and he had a crappie that wrapped the transducer. Happens to everybody, right? And instead of grabbing the Vex and the rod and pulling them both the same time, he tried lifting the transducer with the fish, and all of a sudden it broke. And I heard the mad scramble trying to catch this fish at the hole and everything, and then all the curse words and everything else that goes along with it. And I'm like, well, it's just fishing with my dad, you know. That's where I gained my vocabulary. And I was sitting there fishing, and I was still catching fish, and all of a sudden I wasn't hearing any action. And I turned and looked, and I'm like, why aren't you fishing? And well, he had his bobber rod still sitting there, but he's like, well, I can't see to tie another jig on the actual hole that he was fishing. So he's like, well, we're almost done. Just keep fishing. And I was like, well, that's stupid. And I'm like, give me your rod. I'll tie another jig on. And so I tied another jig on. We continued our catching, and literally I went home, cleaned all the fish, and went to bed, and I was just about asleep. I mean, everybody knows where you're about ready to, like, you know, I'm sure Josh has also been like sleep and like slapped you, you know, when you feel like you're falling, everything's happening. And it was at that point where I was like, it hit my brain, like, why are eyes on jigs so small anyways? And I kind of like half in my sleep, just kind of like, I had a piece of paper next to the bed, and I drew this shape, like, yeah, whatever. And it was the next day I was doing like yard work, and it was like halfway through the day, and I'm like, I drew something in my sleep last night. What the hell did I, you know, and just kind of clicked. And I went in our room, and I looked at this piece of paper, and I was like, oh my God, you know, it was like, I'm a millionaire. I'm going to make millions of dollars, you know, and I got way excited about it. I started drawing shapes on that hook. That's kind of where everything kind of stemmed from. But as far as when it comes to making a mold, I was just a normal go to the store and buy whatever they give you guy, you know, and try to make it work. And so, you know, the hook was a huge hurdle, still is a hurdle. We're about crossing that one. But the mold too, that was another thing, because I haven't dove into the spin cast mold yet. The guy that actually I might buy some equipment from was just trying to call me, so I'll have to call him back after we're done. But you know, ultimately I'm pouring these, you know, I can do like in your blank do it mold, which I'm guessing you have, where you buy a standard one, you put the hook in, you just, you know, and you pour your lead or whatnot. I'm kind of doing I can load 6, but it seems like only like 4 of the 6 pour good, and then you always have the one that always works. So it's like, all right, whatever. So I sit in my garage, and I'm pouring 1 or 2 at a time, because I feel I'm just as fast with the 2 versus the ones that didn't work, and trying to figure out how to make them perfect. So getting a custom mold for a custom hook was insane, but we've crossed that bridge, and things are starting to roll. I guess if anything, the one question at shows that I get more than anything is the tungsten thing. Oh, you're gonna have tungsten? You're gonna have a tungsten? I like tungsten jigs. Again, I feel bad for the normal angler who doesn't think like, I don't want to say it that way, because it's nothing against them. It's just they've been fed this line of tungsten, and it has to be tungsten. If you're not using tungsten, you're not going to catch fish unless it's on tungsten. All right, tungsten has its time and place. I get it. But honestly, the deepest I fished all winter long was 24 feet of water, and the fish were suspended. They were 19 feet down and 24 feet of water. And I had no issues getting my smallest lead jig down, even with slush in the hole. And so it becomes one of them. It's not even a point of, discussion. It's just, yeah, you're happy you can get your jig down, or you think you paid $4 for a jig versus $2.50 a jig, because it's, this word tungsten that you just got fed, and it's been slammed across everything. Do you remember when UV was like, oh my God, if I don't have a UV jig, I'm not going to catch anything. And everyone's like, well, I guess I got to have UV. So we run to the store and we start stocking up on all the UV stuff. And then we get out and actually fish with it. We're like, I was catching fish before I had to go buy all this UV stuff. It was the same thing. Like, we were catching fish before tungsten was a thing. And the biggest hurdle on the tungsten side, because I do have plans to do tungsten, because, hey, if you want to pay a premium price for tungsten, especially with a custom hook and everything, I might as well dive into that market, But there's two places in our world that have tungsten: Russia and China. We don't have tungsten in the United States. So who wants to help me work with one of those countries right now?
Well, and the thing about that, because I think that's, almost an important piece of this is like, whether or not like the raw metal of tungsten is around or not in the United States is not the case. It's the ability to be able to forge it, like the actual temperature to get molten tungsten and then into a jig that's small is a process that honestly is super specialized. And that's why it takes these factories that are in these other places, because they specialize in different crazy stuff like that, But I think that, that's cool. Tungsten is awesome. There is a time and a place. And like, if you can break into that, like, more power to you, because that is awesome. Yeah. But I think that there's also so much to be said for, a lead jig. And first of all, having it handmade, because then, the quality is there. But, I think the other thing about lead is, because there is so much focus on tungsten, you always try to give the fish something new or something that's going to attract their eye. And I think because that fast fall rate of the tungsten jig has become the thing that anglers do or whatever, I think when you do put something down there that might, if it sinks a little bit slower, because it is still metal that's going to fall through the water. But I mean, I think, that different fall rate might catch that fish's eye. There might be different things that people might want to transition back to lead sometimes.
Emily, you really hit the nail on the head right there. And I think that is the place where lead does have a benefit over tungsten, is fall rate. Because as soon as you put your bait in a hole and it clears the ice, or if it's open water and you have it under a bobber, if it falls too fast and you happen to have your depth set wrong, or you go blowing past, I don't know how many times this year I keep trying to tell people on the What's Working Now page or anything, like, literally, like, get below the ice. Like, as soon as you start seeing like a little glimpse of something on your, start fishing there and then go down. Because otherwise, I fished with this lady, super, super nice lady. And she was just, I think she's new to ice fishing, or she loves fishing. I don't want to say she's new, but she's been fed this line of get down, get down, get down, get down, get down there, get down there, get down there. And I'm like, and I was watching her fish on her locator, and I was like, no, we're in 10 feet of water. The crappies are between 3 and 5 feet down. You're going 8 feet of water instantly. So you're blowing past these fish that their eyes, okay, the fish's brains. Josh, you actually had a very, very, very good post, by the way, about spring or water temperature. So nice job there.
Thank you.
But ultimately, fish, what is their predator other than us? Birds and other fish. Okay. Those are about the two other things they have to worry about. Something taking them from above, or something coming at them in the weed bed where they're not ready for it. So they really are looking up all the time. How many times in the spring, when Josh was talking about water temps, you've seen like panfish, like with their backs cresting the water. I mean, they're right on the surface, and a bird, just their shadow goes by, and it starts this chain reaction of boosh, boosh, boosh. Like all the fish freak out and they scatter because they're looking up. I mean, they're up there like, we're up here because it's warm. I'm on the beach. It's all nice. We're in the sun. And it's like, something happens and they freak out. So fish are looking up. So whether they're looking up for something that's going to attack them or they're looking up for opportunity to feed. So if you have a tungsten jig and you plunge that thing down, unless you stop and tell your brain to stop that thing on the way down, you're going to blow past the fish half the time. They're not going to have an opportunity to even see it. It's already below them. And once it's below them, they just keep cruising by.
Mm-hmm.
It is true.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff, as far as my use of tungsten has to do with more with a profile thing. But if we go back to what you were saying about positioning your knot, you don't have to like me personally, I like having a vertical jig setup. Normally I have a vertical jig setup, a horizontal jig setup, and a spoon. Those are my 3 rods generally I have in a box. And the reason for that is mostly just profile size, right? Because a lot of times in the wintertime, we like to fish horizontal a lot. That's my favorite. Just because it has a big profile and it creates a big shadow and it gives a big target for fish to hit. And I like fishing big lures. But sometimes you need to go vertical, and that really, you can do the vertical horizontal presentation where your jig is horizontal. So is basically there's no mass to it, and hang just your plastic or your bait right off the tip of it. And all they see is just that bait. And so with your design, you really eliminate one of those rods, and you really eliminate having to use the tungsten to minimize your profile. You can just move your knot around.
Yep. Exactly.
And so, it just depends on how you want to fish. But yeah, I really like as a fall rate factor, like unless you're going and fishing like Mendota out by us, or down by Madison where it's 80-foot perch that you're planning on eating, or fishing the bay for whitefish in 120 feet, like there really is no reason to have to use tungsten for the fall rate. It's more a profile thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. And ultimately too, like I follow the Ultimate Panfish League a lot and what they are doing and what anglers are doing. And they run into, I think, a situation where it's more numbers and getting the right size fish than it is I mean, everyone, when the time's ticking, when you have limited time to fish, it's efficiency. The reason they're using tungsten and small is because now they're doing, like you said, a profile thing. They're doing a small, get me down quick, but also present a single spike, maybe 2 spikes, or a waxworm. Because they want to get down quick, get the fish, and then, this isn't the right fish, get down, try to get another fish, and try to do the numbers game versus the, and again, tournament angling is totally different than going out and having a good time and fishing and just enjoying yourself. It's a totally different mindset. And the reason why I believe that the majority of the fishermen are using like a spoon or a tungsten is because they can fish faster, because time is ticking and your heart's pounding and there's money on the line, and you won't want to grab a lead or something that will fall slower, even though it could benefit you. You're not going to grab it because you just know that sand's coming out of that hourglass, man. You just, you got to make your hay immediately. So, I tournament fish very little. I really, honestly, I don't know. I understand tournament fishing, but how many like legit tournament anglers do you know that if you talk to Joe Schmo at a bait shop would have a clue who they are? It's very minimal. I'm stunned every time I go to a show and I'm working next to Dave Gans and I'm like, guys, Dave. And they're like, who? I'm like, that's Dave Gans. Like, don't talk to me, talk to him. And they're like, I don't know who he is. And I'm like, how can you not? I mean, did you come out of a cave? I mean, Dave Gans, like the number one name in ice fishing, period. But again, I think people just when it comes, especially ice fishing, it's so primitive still. Even though we have mega technology and mega this and everything, people still go to stores and they just kind of look and they go, in the cart, and they go and they try it and fish it and everything. But kind of weird to me anyways. But yeah. Sorry about the tangent on the tournament fishing.
No,
that's
this is
good.
We do have a good question though. Hero fishing, myth or not, does tungsten show up better on a flasher than lead?
No.
I don't think I've ever seen that to be the case. One thing I'm just sitting here thinking is, if you think of, besides the what is it, the pinhead minnow, what's been the other popular bait this year that you can think of? And when in my head it comes to that eyeball spoon from Northland. That thing has been all over the place, and people have been catching a lot of fish on it. Just a lead ball with an eyeball on it, and so it's it's really funny that we're sitting here talking about a really cool product that's made out of lead and the lead versus tungsten, and then it just happens to be that one of the most popular products out there right now is the eyeball spoon.
But I think one of the things that makes a jig show up on a flasher is kind of that
mass
size. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that mass. So like when you have a vertical presentation, you're probably going to market less than your horizontal presentation.
Well, that being said, with the jig we're talking about being able to move your knot, you're not missing that mass, right? You're not changing the size, you're just changing the position of the hook. And so you'll probably have a more constant mark on your flasher using your design, Corey, than you would, switching over to like a vertical jig, because the vertical jigs in the ice fishing world are normally flat blades or cylindrical, and those don't like to show up very much. Keep an eye on your plastics though, because you will notice a difference if you're using, let's say, like a single color plastic or a plastic with flake in it or different hardnesses of plastic. They do show up differently.
Really?
I've never noticed that.
Yeah. My mind was just blown. This is I guess maybe an advanced tip for people. So you got to think, like, from above me, right? That's our sound. When we put this thing in the water, it's casting this sound. It's got to go out, right? So when you fish a bait horizontally, your locator has a better chance to ping that sound off something horizontal and return it to your screen so it shows up differently. And so if you switch to a vertical instead of horizontal, that sound pinging, it's less surface area. So that's why, I'm such a huge fan of XLR and low power. And honestly, I don't know how I'd be able to fish without it. I honestly would tell Vexlar, just make me a low power only unit and let's just win this thing, because it's unbelievable to me. And again, this comes from hours and hours and hours and hours and days and weeks and years of staring at a stupid screen, the most primitive video game that there is. But that's your telltale sign of everything. So low power, when you have everything set right, you can tell, like if I'm fishing horizontal, I can see how big my bait is, that every once in a while, when I get my undulation, when I get my bump, when I get my bait moving, you can see everything. And when a fish comes in and is at your bait, so not just because they're in there doesn't mean that's a big fish, but it's a bigger fish because their head's wider, their body's longer, you have more sound pinging going down their body. That's your telltale sign that it's a bigger fish. I leave holes all the time, like jig, 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 jig. I'm like, yeah, this isn't what I need. And I bolt, and people are like, why aren't you fishing this hole? I'm like, have at it, man. They're all freaking little 3-inch perch. If that's what you're after, I'm going after the stuff that, the good stuff. But that's just one of those things too. Like I remember Bruce Mosher. I don't know if he follows you guys or not, but he has the Ice Buster bobber. Everybody has seen them or found them on the shoreline in the spring. That's where I've never bought one because I just always find them in the spring. He has what's called a jig disc. Have you ever heard of it or seen it?
Mm-hmm.
It's the weirdest thing ever. It's literally a clear plastic little itty bitty disc. So what you do is you put that on. So if you have a vertical spoon, even though it's thin and clear, it's still something that your sound bounces off of, and it can give it a better return on your machine. So whether you're using Vexilar or Humminbird or Markham or Lowrance or anybody's electronics, if you're struggling to find your bait, because that's what, to me, I mean, I fished Vexilar basically my entire life. When people are like, "Oh, I can't see my jig," and I'm like, "Huh? That's a thing?" I literally, like, I can tell by staring at my Vexilar if I have a fish that maybe I whiff on it and I bump it and my bait isn't horizontal, and I can see my bait and I know right away that it looks a little bit smaller because I'm closer to that vertical, but I can still see it. But it tells me right away. It's like something ain't right. And I reel up, change my stuff. Yep, it was off, drop back down, and then catch that fish again. So not to be so commercial to whatever brand electronics you have, but you have to be in tune with your electronics. You know, the longer you stare at that screen, the more you know, the more that you know, the more you trust it. The sad thing is I have like a high-end Lowrance on my boat, which I'm still trying to learn after I don't know how many updates. And then did you put the new update in it? And you got to update this and that and the other thing. And I'm like, wait a minute. My Vexilar literally will show me a teeny tiny little jig, and it's never lied to me one time. Why aren't I fishing that on my boat versus this high-end unit? And it's weird to me that, you know, we just go from this ice world. And you guys have worked shows, and I'm sure you probably have an electronics brand that you've maybe helped out and everything. And you'll talk to people and they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, $700. That seems like a lot of money for a flasher." And it's like, what do you have on your boat? And it's like, well, I got a something side scan, mega imaging, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, how much did you pay for that? $3,000. Nope. Never was a thought. Nope. You know, $3,000. Throw it on my boat. I have to have it. But yet $700 for something that don't lie to you and catches you more fish than anything. That seems too much. It's just our
Don't
world.
tell people I said this, but it's because there's a lot of fair weather ice fishermen out there. I mean, I guess not necessarily in a bad way, but I mean, there's a lot of people that like can't tolerate the cold, or maybe they have a disability, they can't get out there, or, you know, whatever the reason is. I mean, I understand that's a really extreme condition, but you're right. There's a lot more people that will balk at the price of winter electronics, and then summer they just throw it all on the boat.
I think some of that comes with too, like, the lack of knowledge and versatility. Because I know one of our buddies, Matt Waldron, he puts his Vexilar up on the front of his boat all summer.
Smart.
And, you know, he'll fish his Vexilar in the weeds and stuff, and he does really well with that unit on his boat. And I just don't think that the knowledge is there. And and you're a huge proponent of this, Emily, is like when you can take and have equipment that crosses over. Matt, you are not.
Waldo. Oh, Matt Rest. Yeah.
but when you can take that equipment and cross it over and be able to justify that, I think, you know, ice fishing is difficult for a lot of people because it takes, for as much time as you get to fish, it takes almost that or more time to prepare to go fishing, because you have so much stuff to load in the truck and you have so much stuff to get prepared. You know, the boat, you go get in the truck, you dump it in, you pick it back up, and then you take it off your truck. There really is not much prep that goes into the boat stuff compared to ice fishing, you know. And so I understand that, but it just is yeah, it's more of a knowledge thing, I think, in my opinion.
Well, Josh, I do like what you mentioned about this crossover. And it's weird to hear Matt Waldron because everyone knows him as Waldo. So
Yeah.
I'm like, Matt Waldron, who's he? It's Waldo, right? But anyways, like, that's the thing is people they think their ice fishing stuff is like, so many people right now, it's the end of ice fishing, and basically it just gets packed up and away it goes. And then open water comes and it's like, well, time to get this. So that's what's been like really cool. Like with Macula, I didn't think of this as an ice fishing only jig at all. Literally, it's like this needs ice and open water love. We got to have it. And the first one I made was my size 8. So it's actually a titch over 1/32 ounce. It's a little heavier than 1/32, but I wanted that little bit of in betweenish good all the 1/32. Let's not kid ourselves. That is the best all around size for crappie and panfish fishing there is, unless you have big white crappies down in Texas or something and you need a 1/16 or 1/8 ounce because they're all big. But the overall best size in our area, in our region, is 1/32. So ultimately that's what I really, really, really wanted to have. Got to have it. And we tested them on ice right away, but then I started to see the functionality in open water more so almost than ice. And I was like, oh my God, people need these. And it's not just they need it, or, this is just going to help people continue fishing and learn more about a sport that we all love. And it's been cool because I know people that have bought my jigs in Texas, Florida, Alabama, like southern states. And when they kind of message me like, hey, your jigs work. And I'm like, it's a jig. If you have everything right, I don't care whose it is, and, whether it's Northland or Lindy or Clam or any other brand, as long as you present it right, you're going to be effective. But, it's just cool to see the stories that have been continuing to come in, the positive reports. The people are like, oh my God, this is, one gentleman who lives in northern Minnesota and bought some, and again he's like, I'm so shaky, he's like, I got to tie 7 rods at home because if I before your jig came out, if I went out and broke, I had to grab another rod because I could not tie again. And I've heard that story over and over, that ease of tie. So that's been really cool, that the positive stories, to know that it kind of keeps me going, because I'm not a millionaire yet. Keyword yet, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I heard it takes money to make money. So if I want to make $1 million, I have to spend $1 million. And then I could say I made $1 million. But ultimately, I'm really trying to grow something that benefits anglers, keeps them fishing, keeps them having fun, and ultimately, it's all about success and enjoying it. Who wants to go fishing and just not catch anything? I understand bush light needs to be drank and stuff like that, but I like to catch fish.
Yeah.
And by the way, why did they put did you see the ice fishing version of the bush light can?
Yeah.
What the heck are they doing?
I don't know. There was way too many people in one hole there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they must have been in Wisconsin. They were having a good time.
Well, all I gotta say is that I petition everybody to check your jigs out, because we can't let the bass guys have, the Midwest finesse jig and the swim jig and the shaky head. Panfishermen need some options too. So this is just something, not to necessarily replace all the jigs in your box, but let's bring in some diversity in jigs and be able to spread the love around,
And actually, this is a true story from last fall. So not that terribly long ago, I had a friend that came up from Florida, and he was just like, he wanted smallmouth bass because they don't have that down there. And let's just not lie, smallmouth bass are way more fun than largemouth. They're fun. And so he was so amped up because we had a phenomenal June bite. It was just ridiculous. So he built this awesome tackle bag, like full of just like, this would be perfect for smallmouth. And he had so many things, and we went out and we were struggling. He brought his son up. We hit every number one best spot I know, everything. And it was about a day and a half of basically blanking on smallmouth bass, like 0, this many. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? These things are usually like, this is when they eat, in the fall. And I was like, I'm just going to fish sunnies and crappies because I want to catch something. I'm sick of, we threw, the swim jigs, the drop shots, the crankbaits, the suspending crankbaits, the top waters, the chandelier jigs. I don't know if chandelier, I don't, that's a term I don't even understand. Basically everything but the kitchen sink we threw. I mean, you should have seen my boat. Like the baits that didn't work laying out was ridiculous. So I'm like, I'm just going to throw out my small 1/32 ounce, a size 8, and a gulp minnow or something. And I'm just under a bobber. I want to catch some sunnies and crappies just to have some entertainment. I cast out, my bobber twitched. I set the hook, and it was a 5-pound, 13-ounce smallmouth bass. So then I think we got sunnies and crappies, and I caught a couple more smaller smallmouth. So then, we got to downsize. So the next day he's like, all right. So he was rigging rods all night. Like, we're going to go out to that same spot, and I'm going to have a smaller, tiny version of everything. And literally all the fish, all the smallmouth bass, not joking, were on panfish tackle. And they held up. So he was like, oh my God, I would have never thought. And he's a huge bass guy. Like, that's all they do in Florida is bass, I swear. So it's just one of them things. Like, sometimes you got to match the hatch. You got to give the fish what they want to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been fun. And I do have plans to grow and get larger sizes and go worldwide and saltwater and everything. But baby steps,
Yeah.
just baby steps.
That's awesome. So for people at home who are interested in, checking out what you have, all the colors and all of that, do you have like social media or website, or what do you have that they can look you up?
Social media, what's that? Yes, obviously we have Instagram, which is Macula Tackle. We have Facebook, Macula Tackle. We have the website, www.maculatackle.com. Everything Macula, I think, is covered. I don't even know. I think my daughter just started a TikTok page. I'm like, I have it on my phone. I still don't understand what TikTok is or how to do it. My son shows me videos that he thinks are entertaining, and I go, okay. But if we have to be there, we're there. We're trying to get everywhere. But yeah, obviously, that's the main places where you see it. But one thing I try to tell people is really fun, and I don't know if you guys have found the What's Working Now page, not a group. We all know groups. Groups are big, huge places where things get lost, but it's just a page. So it's kind of like dialed in information, and it's called What's Working Now. And basically we go fish, we put our reports up, and if it helps people, it helps people. And that's a really fun page we run. And obviously if you see my name, you're going to see a lot of Macula Tackle represented. So a lot of my reports have been Macula Tackle. And we always try to link and cross and put the, whatever, so everyone can find it, hopefully.
Cool.
Yeah, we try.
So with that, we're hoping that everybody at home is going to go and check that out. And thank you for being here tonight to talk all about it with us. Yeah,
it was cool because I remember when Crappie Junction just burst onto the screen. I love the name Crappie. I love, it's like Petticoat Junction, I think was a show back from like my parents' era or something like that. And I'm like, I'm following that page because, but it was really cool because we haven't met until I think the Northwest Sports Show.
Yeah.
Otherwise, maybe in passing at a different show. So it was really cool to actually meet you guys. And you guys definitely have your hearts in the right places. It's information, it's sharing your experiences. You keep it very fun. It's always fun plugging into this little fishing world that we have and sharing our experiences. So you guys do a fantastic job at that.
I appreciate that.
Well, and we appreciate you being a part of it because we couldn't do it, without the rest of the industry. And looking forward to bumping into you definitely at the next show or expo. So that should be a great time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. I'm definitely trying to find a list of the best places where I can go and bring this little thing, which is Macula Tackle, to everybody, and just keep the slow grind and keep it growing. And just it's been fun. It's been fun. That's all I have to say. It's awesome.
And actually, I was almost going to be here to sum the show up because it's about that time, but I did almost forget that we have a giveaway to follow up from last week.
Yeah. So I wanted to announce that Mr. Eric Roca, thank you for subscribing to our YouTube page. And we'll get a hold of you and we'll send out that walleye jig kit. Hopefully that'll help you out this year. I know you fished down by that like Winnebago system. So should be some good colors and some good sizes. So congratulations. Thank you for subscribing. For everybody else, just make sure you hit us up on YouTube. We put up some stuff on there once in a while. This show comes out on YouTube, so if you have an easier time watching there than Facebook, that's on there too. It's little other stuff. So follow over there, and hopefully we'll be doing some more giveaways this summer.
And with that, you'll hear about it here or on next week's episode of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.